Welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into just one chapter, Isaiah chapter 10.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one.
Our plan is basically to unpack what's going on here. The key messages, the warnings, the prophecies, really get a feel for the flow of this chapter.
And it definitely doesn't waste any time getting started. It opens pretty forcefully.
Right, no gentle introduction. It kicks off with this big, whoa!
Exactly. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees. It's aimed squarely at the powerful, the rule makers.
And it spells out who gets hurt by these laws.
It does. It talks about stripping rights from the poor, denying justice to the oppressed. Widows become prey, the fatherless get robbed. It's a picture of systemic injustice.
Really paints a picture of vulnerability being exploited.
Definitely. And then Isaiah flips it back on them. He asks, what are you going to do on the day of reckoning when disaster
But
hits?
you run, where do you hide all that stuff you gained unfairly?
Yeah, exactly. What's left? Captivity, death. It's showing how useless their power and wealth are when faced with, well, ultimate justice.
It's a powerful rhetorical punch. But what gets me is what comes next, even after describing this complete failure.
Ah, yes. Yet for all this, his anger is not turned away. His hand is still upraised.
Wow. So the punishment itself doesn't even resolve the underlying anger about the injustice. That's intense. Sets a really serious tone.
It really does. And then from that internal focus on Israel's injustice, the chapter pivots dramatically. It brings in Assyria.
The regional superpower of the time. But the way it introduces them is unexpected.
Very, because Assyria isn't just presented as this independent empire doing its thing. The text calls Assyria the rod of my anger, the club of my wrath.
Okay, let's unpack that. Assyria, this empire everyone feared, is described as basically a stick in God's hand.
Pretty much, sent against a godless nation of people who anger me, referring to Israel or Judah.
So from God's perspective, Assyria's job is specific.
Yes. To seize loot, snatch plunder, trample them down like mud in the streets. It's a stark image, this huge empire reduced to an instrument of divine discipline.
But, and this seems crucial, Assyria has no clue about this divine purpose, right?
Got a clue. That's the tension. Isaiah says, but this is not what he intends. This is not what he has in mind. Assyria's thinking is totally different.
What is Assyria thinking then?
Its purpose, according to the text, is just straightforward destruction, wiping out nations for its own gain, its own glory, pure self-interest and expansion.
And the Assyrian king's boasting really drives that home.
Oh, absolutely. He's full of pride. Are not my commanders all kings? He just rattles off his conquests like they're nothing. Calno, Carchemish, Hamath, Arpad, Samaria, Damascus.
It's like he's ticking boxes.
And the way he compares them is key to his arrogance. He says basically, look, I grabbed all these kingdoms of their idols, and their idols were maybe even better than Jerusalem's or Samaria's. So shouldn't I be able to do the same thing to Jerusalem and its images?
So he sees the God of Israel as just another local deity, another idol to be swept aside, completely misses the bigger picture.
Completely. He thinks the power is all his. He doesn't realize he's wielding borrowed strength, so to speak.
And that misunderstanding, that pride, is where the story turns again, isn't it?
Exactly. Isaiah reveals the next step in the divine plan. After God has finished using Assyria against his own people in Jerusalem, the judgment shifts.
Not back onto Israel.
No, talk to Assyria. The tool itself is going to be judged.
That's a really significant point about accountability, even for those used for a purpose.
It is, and the reason given is crystal clear. I will punish the king of Assyria for the willful pride of his heart and the haughty look in his eyes. It's about his attitude, his arrogance.
His failure to see beyond himself.
Precisely. And the text doubles down on this, giving us more of his internal boasting.
Right, he says something like,
By the strength of my hand I have done this, and by my wisdom because I have understanding. He takes full credit. He thinks he rearranged the world order, plundered nations, subdued kings, all by himself.
and he uses these images of, what, gathering eggs from a nest?
Yeah, like it was effortless. He gathered the wealth of nations, like picking up abandoned eggs, and nobody could even flap a wing or chirp in protest. Total dominance, all self-attributed.
He really believes he's the source of the power.
Which sets up Isaiah's brilliant rebuttal. These analogies are just fantastic.
The ones about the tools.
Yeah. The text asks these almost sarcastic questions. Does the axe raise itself above the one who swings it? Or the saw boast against the one who uses it?
It sounds absurd when you put it like that.
Or even more so, as if a rod were to wield the person who lifts it, or a club brandish something that isn't wood. It just cuts through the king's whole worldview.
It makes it so clear. Assyria is just the tool, not the craftsman. The power isn't inherent in the weapon.
Exactly. The tool can't boast against the user. And because Assyria completely missed this, judgment is coming for them, and it's described pretty graphically.
What does it say?
The Lord Almighty sends a wasting disease on his best troops. A fire consumes Assyria's splendor, its pomp.
A fire linked to God.
Yes, the light of Israel, the Holy One, becomes the fire. It will burn up Assyria's forces, described as thorns and briars, like incredibly quickly in a single day.
So the very thing that is light for Israel becomes destruction for the arrogant oppressor. And the scale of this defeat sounds total.
It's portrayed as complete devastation, the splendor of his forests and fertile fields symbolizing Assyria's full strength, its army, its resources utterly destroyed, like a sick person wasting away.
And that image of the forest.
It continues. The remaining trees of his forests will be so few that a child could rate them down. Imagine that. This vast, terrifying army reduced to a number so small a child could count them, just decimated.
Wow. So after detailing Assyria's rise and fall, the focus comes back to Israel.
Exactly, to the survivors, the remnant.
And this is where we see a glimmer of hope.
Yes. In that day, the remnant of Israel will no longer rely on him who struck them down, meaning Assyria or perhaps other earthly powers they had wrongly trusted,
What instead?
but will truly rely on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. That word truly feels important. It's a fundamental shift.
From reliance on human strength, maybe their own or alliances, to reliance on God.
Precisely. They learn through judgment where true security lies. A remnant will return to the mighty God. It's a spiritual return as much as a physical one.
So survival isn't just about making it through, it's about this transformation of trust.
Right. But the text is also realistic about numbers. Even if Israel is as numerous as the sand by the sea,
Only a remnant will return. It doesn't sugarcoat the severity of the judgment that led to this point.
no, it calls the destruction a decreed reality, overwhelming and righteous. It's something the Lord will carry out. So the hope is real, but it's tempered by the reality of the widespread judgment.
Okay, so after clarifying that, the message seems to get very specific,
Yeah.
aimed right at Jerusalem.
Yes, a direct word of comfort to the people in Zion who are, currently terrified by this Assyrian threat looming over them.
What's the message?
Oh, my people who live in Zion, do not be afraid of the Assyrians. He names the fear, acknowledges the reality, who beat you with a rod, as Egypt did.
He gets it, but offers reassurance.
He does. He says essentially, hang on. My anger against you is almost over, and soon my wrath is turning to their destruction. The time for discipline is ending. The time for judging the instrument is beginning.
And he reminds them of past victory.
Right, grounding the promise. He mentions defeating Midian at Oreb, parting the waters against Egypt. It's like saying, remember, I've done this before against overwhelming odds.
Okay, so don't be afraid, judgment is shifting. What's the immediate practical effect for Israel?
Liberation. Their burden will be lifted from your shoulders, their yoke from your neck.
The pressure is coming off.
Exactly. The yoke will be broken. Gone. Finish.
That's a powerful promise. And then the chapter shifts again, almost like zooming in on the Assyrian army's final movements.
Yeah, it becomes this incredibly vivid, almost cinematic sequence. It lists the towns as the Assyrians advance closer and closer to Jerusalem.
Like a tracking shot in a film.
Totally. Iath, Migron, storing supplies at Michmash. They cross the pass, camp at Geba. You feel the panic spreading. Ramah trembles. Gibeah flees.
It lists specific places, reacting Galim, Lisha, poor Anathoth, Madmen flying, Gibeon taking cover. It feels very immediate, very real.
It really builds the tension, and the culmination is when they reach Nob.
Which is very close.
Extremely close, just across the valley from Jerusalem. And from there, they make their final gesture of arrogance.
What do?
They shake their fist at the mount of the daughter of Zion, at the hill of Jerusalem. It's pure defiance, standing right there, about to strike, utterly confident in their own power.
The absolute peak of their pride right at the doorstep. The tension must have been immense.
Unbearable. They're poised. And that's the exact moment Isaiah chooses to show the divine intervention. Not the attack, but the stop.
How is it described?
The Lord Almighty, will lop off the boughs with great power. It uses tree imagery again. The tall, proud trees are felled, brought low.
Like cutting down a forest.
Exactly. He will cut down the forest thickets with an axe, comparing Assyria's mighty army to the dense forests of Lebanon being leveled. Just as they're about to strike, wham! Divine power cuts them down right where they stand, arrogance halted, threat neutralized.
What a climax. So we've journeyed from injustice within Israel to Assyria as a tool. Assyria's pride, the promise of its judgment, hope for a remnant changing their trust, comfort for the city, and finally, this sudden divine rescue at the last possible second.
It's quite the arc. It really plays out that tension between human pride and power versus, well, divine sovereignty and purpose.
Leaves you thinking about where real power lies
Yeah.
and what happens when we mistake the instrument for the source.
Definitely. And that theme of reliance, it just keeps coming back. The unjust rulers rely on bad laws, Assyria relies on military might, but the remnant.
They learn to truly rely on the Lord. That shift is central.
It really is. Which maybe leads to a final thought to chew on, something directly from this chapter's core.
Okay, what's that?
Well, considering everything we've seen, the futility of reliance on unjust systems or self-proclaimed strength, and this call for the remnant to rely truly on God, what does that actually mean? What does it look like to place your ultimate trust, your fundamental reliance, somewhere completely outside your own abilities or the powerful systems around you, especially when things seem overwhelming?
Like that remnant facing down Assyria, then having to rebuild.
Yeah.
How did that shift in reliance actually work? What does it involve?
Yeah. What does true reliance look like in practice, beyond just the idea? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for this deep dive.
My pleasure. Always fascinating.